What is going on, everybody? Happy Thanksgiving to each and every one of you who help support the Catch Fantasy Football and are members of this community. It's Turkey Day. It's time to eat some food. It's time to watch some Thanksgiving football, spend some time with family. But of course, there's plenty of fantasy implications with that. We have 3 games today and a Black Friday game. So, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go through each and every single matchup for Thanksgiving and that Black Friday game and talk about everything that you need to know in terms of fantasy football. First on the slate here today, we have got the Bears traveling to face the Lions. So let's take a look at the Bears offensive players. DeAndre Swift coming off of a tough game against the Minnesota Vikings. He just had 9.5 fantasy points, 30 yards on the ground, 3 catches for 35 receiving yards, no touchdowns. We look back since week 8, he's had 2 single-digit performances and 3 double-digit performances. So Swift's been a little bit up and down. He's your RB17 on the season. It's another tough matchup this week. I think Swift is startable, but be prepared for a lower ceiling game and another tough matchup as the Lions allow the second fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs. So I'm avoiding DeAndre Swift if I can, but he's definitely still startable. He's still going to get RB1 volume. Always a chance he can score. Just depends on what you got. He's a startable player, but just look at what else you have. Roschon Johnson, not enough volume for me. I know he has a touchdown in each of his last 2 games, but he's just getting some of that goal line work. He's not getting a ton of volume, and this is a tough matchup once again. I don't want to start Roschon Johnson today. But when it comes to these Bears wide receivers, they've looked much better overall the past couple weeks with that change at offensive coordinator Shane Waldron gone since the last 2 weeks have passed, right? We've seen DJ Moore have 13 or more fantasy points in 2 games straight. We've seen Keenan Allen have a big game this past week, a pretty poor game in week 11. Then Rome Odunze, the opposite. Good game week 11, bad game this past week. But Rome Odunze had 10 targets in the last 2 games. Keenan Allen, 8 or more targets in the last 2 games. DJ Moore, 7 targets in the last 2 games. So I like all these guys here. I especially like DJ Moore. I think he's the safest this week. The closest thing to a number 1 wide receiver, obviously, here for the Bears. So start DJ Moore with confidence. Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen, flex plays, risky plays, but they could pay off. Depends on what you got, but you could definitely flex either of those guys, and they could definitely pay off this week for sure. Cole Kmet, tough matchup as the Lions allow the fewest fantasy points to tight ends. He had 13.4 fantasy points against Minnesota this past week, 10 targets, 7 catches, 64 receiving yards. He's in that streaming category for tight ends. If you're absolutely desperate, you could roll with him, but we obviously do not like this matchup. Then last but not least, Caleb Williams has been a lot better with the change in offensive coordinator as well. It's a tough matchup on the road as the Lions allow the 6th fewest fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. So if you want to roll with Caleb Williams as like a streaming option, you can. Got no bye weeks of week 13, so I don't really think you're going to be forced to have to start Caleb Williams this week. But double quarterback, super flex formats, he's fine, but I'm not expecting like 26 points that we got in week 12. I think closer to like 16 points that we saw in week 11, 17, 18 points is much more doable for Caleb Williams today. We'll see what happens, but this is pretty much a overall tough matchup for the Bears offensive starters, but the wide receivers definitely have a good matchup here in week 13. Taking a look at the Lions offensive starters, David Montgomery looks like he's going to be good to go. He's going to play in this game. He's been dealing with that shoulder injury. So if you own Monty, he's the RB9 on the season. He is double digits in every game this year, except for 1 game against Minnesota. Fire up David Montgomery with confidence. This just feels right. He's going to go out there. He's going to eat, right? Monty on Thanksgiving Day feels like a nice apple pie type start. You're starting David Montgomery. He's going to be the turkey that helps bring home a victory this week in your flex spot, in your RB2 spot, whatever it is. Jahmyr Gibbs, if Monty's the apple pie or the turkey, Jahmyr Gibbs is that nice side of mashed potatoes that you absolutely cannot go without today. He's your RB3 on the season, double digits in every game so far. The Bears allowing the 19th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Gibbs, Monty, let's not spend too much time on it. You're starting both of these players. Amon-Ra St. Brown, still going into this matchup at the time I'm recording this, which it is late on Wednesday night, as questionable as he's dealing with that knee injury. So we got to pay very close attention to Amon-Ra St. Brown's status. And I will say, you're definitely starting Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, how can you really bench him? But he might be looking like that can of cranberry sauce that you might eat or you might not eat. Controversial topic there. Because it's a tough matchup already, right? Jalen Johnson, the Bears allowing the fifth fewest fantasy points to wide receivers, and he might play hurt. I'm a little worried about him, but I'm going to find myself, if I own Amon-Ra St. Brown, it's going to be really tough to bench him. But make sure you guys are paying attention to your lineups because we might get a last-minute decision on Amon-Ra St. Brown here, and you might have to sit him. Jameson Williams always has that upside. You can throw him in the flex kind of regardless of matchup because, he takes the top off the defense, does those kind of wild plays, right? He's your green bean casserole. That's what Jameson Williams is. A little bit of a wild card, but you want it, right? So if you want to throw him into your flex spot, I'm good with it. But understand this is a tough matchup. But we saw Jordan Addison this past week, kind of thrive as a wide receiver too, and Justin Jefferson kind of gets shut down. That was the Bears' defensive plan. So maybe if Amon-Ra St. Brown plays, we see something similar to that. Jameson Williams a good flex. Amon-Ra, a risky start. But how are you going to bench the wide receiver two at this point in the season? Very tough call there. Jared Goff, the Bears giving up the third fewest fantasy points to the quarterback position. I'm sitting Jared Goff. There's just no real reason to need to play him with no bye weeks this week. 12 or less fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 matchups in a massive game against the Jaguars, one of the worst defenses in the NFL. So I don't want to start Jared Goff today. He's been so inconsistent all over the place. Could have a nice game, but do you really need to risk it? We got no bye weeks this week. I'm staying away from it then. Sam Laporta, he's just kind of like one of these, you got nothing better. You can roll with him, but tight end play has really improved. We got other guys out there like Jonnu Smith, Cade Otton, Hunter Henry, Zach Ertz. Like there's streaming options out there, or players that you've acquired that are just better than Sam Laporta. I'm probably staying away from Sam Laporta unless I'm absolutely desperate here on Thanksgiving Day. Next up, we will have the Giants traveling to face the Cowboys. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm excited about this one. We got the Tommy DeVito Cooper Rush Bowl. I've been waiting all day long, all week long for this one. But Tyrone Tracy, a fumble this past week, a fumble in his previous start in Week 10 against Carolina, starting to be a little bit worrisome. A great matchup in Week 12 against the Bucs, and he had just 9 fantasy points, and you got Tommy DeVito, a quarterback. This offense just can't move the ball. I don't quite know what type of food group they are looking like going up against the Cowboys this week, but I think it could be a rough overall offensive day for the Giants, but this is a smash matchup for Tyrone Tracy. But obviously we saw a little bit of work this past week for Devin Singletary as well as Eric Gray. Slight work to Eric Gray, and still slight work to Devin Singletary, but they got some touches, I think, due to those fumbles, right? So listen, it was a smash matchup this past week as well, but like I said, the offense just couldn't move the ball with Tommy DeVito, quarterback. So Tyrone Tracy, a risky start, but the Cowboys have given up the 29th most fantasy points to their running back position. And if you're interested for some reason in taking a chance on Devin Singletary because of the fumbling issue as of late, don't do it. There's no reason to do that, even in deeper formats. So Tracy, risky start. If you want to risk it for the biscuit, go for it. It is Thanksgiving Day. Malik Neighbors, I think, is a solid start. Like, he's going to get you that floor. That's what he's done in his past 4 starts with 14.9 or less fantasy points in 4 straight games, with the lowest mark being 10.8 fantasy points. So I still think he's very startable. He's going to get the volume, but of course I'm worried about Neighbors in this entire offense with DeVito at quarterback and the state of this team right now. So Neighbors is probably the player I'm the most comfortable with. You should come through with a good floor there, but I don't quite know what the upside is. Rondell Robinson, I'm just staying away. He might get you 8, 9-ish points if you're desperate for a flex play, but once again, we got no bye weeks. There's not like any crazy injuries going into the week, so I don't think you really need to start Robinson this week. I would prefer to sit him, but you're in a deeper format, you're desperate for 8-ish points, you'll probably get that. Tommy DeVito. Tommy Cutlets did not come through for us this past week. I thought maybe he could be a good streaming option due to the matchup, like get you 16, 17, 18 points. Did not do that. He has been dealing with a forearm injury. Suspicious, Tommy DeVito. Nonetheless, it looks like he's going to be the starter. We're not going to see Drew Lock. I think it might actually be better if Drew Lock was the starter for fantasy, but Tommy DeVito, it's another great matchup this week. I'm staying away from it. I think the Cowboys defense could really come through today, so staying away from Tommy DeVito. End of story. Theo Johnson has had some production at the tight end position in the past couple weeks, but not enough here. He was dealing with a back injury, but he's going to be good to go for this matchup. Once again, why do you need to start Theo Johnson? Maybe in a deep dynasty format, if you need 6, 7 points, he might get you that. But let's stay away from the Giants today. Let's call the Giants that side dish that your great aunt brings that you know you're not going to eat. You're just kind of maybe going to throw it on the plate and move along with your day. Let's move along to the Cowboys offense. Now, the Cowboys, on the other hand, I'm going to declare the mac and cheese of Thanksgiving Day here. And I do feel bad. I didn't give the Bears a food group. Let's call the Bears wide receivers retrospectively the ice cream that goes on the dessert. They're not quite the dessert, but they're that scoop of ice cream because they at least got those wide receivers, right? Okay, but the Cowboys here, I think they could end up being some very solid starts in this matchup against the Giants. I think the Cowboys could have a big day today. Rico Dowdle, I think, is a super strong start. He's been very difficult to trust, right? Not really a player that you have wanted to start, but I think he could come through in big fashion today against a Giants defense, giving up the 28th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Just gave up a touchdown to Sean Tucker, Rashad White, Baker Mayfield, and Bucky Irving, all on the ground in one game. Dowdle could have a big performance and then fade off for the rest of the fantasy season and never do anything else for the rest of the season. So he's a good candidate for that mac and cheese side. Eat a lot of mac and cheese today, and then don't eat like any mac and cheese for the next month because you got enough mac and cheese in today that you don't need any more for the next month. I like Rico Dowdle a lot. It's a smash matchup. He hasn't been so good as of late. At least got you 10 points last week. I think this could be a nice spot for him. We'll find out. And, go ahead and throw CeeDee Lamb into that mac and cheese conversation as well because he's had 16 or more fantasy points in the last 2 games with Cooper Rush at quarterback. The first game with Rush, not so good against the Eagles, but the last 2 games have been solid. He still has 10-plus targets in every game since week 6. Your wide receiver 5 on the season. Giants have been okay against wide receivers, but I'm starting CeeDee Lamb this week for sure. He's cleared, not dealing with any injuries. You start him. Jalen Tolbert, Brandon Cooks is actually activated for this game, which I did not know when I put together these slides, but Brandon Cooks is going to play. Okay. I'm not starting any wide receiver on this team other than CeeDee Lamb, but we might see some interesting opportunities for guys like Brandon Cooks, Jalen Tolbert, and maybe even a little sprinkle of Kevontae Turpin, but I'm good with CeeDee Lamb. We got no bye weeks this week, but definitely pay attention to the rest of these Cowboys wide receivers. Now, Jake Ferguson is going to be out as he's dealing with that concussion, right? Which is going to leave Luke Schoonmaker as he's starting tight end, and he's been pretty good in relief of Ferguson. He is a streaming option, but it is a tough matchup as the Giants have given up the second fewest points to tight ends. But Schoonmaker had 11.6 points in week 11, 14.5 in week 12. He's a viable option if you're absolutely desperate for a tight end. He sits at 17% rostered at the time I'm recording this. Then we got Cooper Rush, right? He's a streaming option. Call me crazy, but the Giants give up the 21st most fantasy points to the wide receiver positions, the quarterback position so far on the season, and he has 17.3 or more fantasy points in his last 2 starts, and he was pretty dang good against the Commanders. A pretty clean game. Did have a fumble that wasn't lost, but he threw for 247 passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns, no picks. I like Cooper Rush. If you need a streaming option, but once again, we got no bye weeks, maybe like double quarterback, super flex, dynasty leagues, you could roll Cooper Rush, but he's a viable streaming option, and he tops off that mac and cheese side here on Thanksgiving Day. And if you guys haven't already heard, Underdog is having all kinds of promotions today through Saturday on their website. Make sure you guys are checking your account because you're going to get all kinds of promotions, profit boosts, discount tokens, free picks, all kinds of stuff throughout the week. And if you guys are new to Underdog, be sure to sign up with promo code The Catch. That link is down below because you're going to automatically claim a free pick 'em. Depending on what time you guys sign up with that promo code, you're either going to get a Jordan Love free pick 'em for the week or a Patrick Mahomes free pick 'em for the week. And if you guys sign up later in the week, you're still going to get a free pick 'em for Sunday's action as well. So it's feast week on Underdog. Be sure to sign in, get your free promotions all throughout the entire week. This is going to be going on not just one day, but the entire week. And if you guys are new to Underdog, be sure to hop on there, sign up with promo code The Catch. The link is down below to get your free NFL pick 'em. Oh, and on top of that, you're also going to get a 50% deposit match up to $1,000 when you sign up on Underdog with promo code The Catch. Let's move along to the Miami Dolphins, and they're just some sweet potato casserole is the feeling I got for the Dolphins today. Okay, I mean most of the time it's very good. It's phenomenal actually, but is it gonna be phenomenal today? Depends on who's making it, right? So I will say one thing: Devon A. Shane's feeling real sweet today. We're starting him. He has double digits in every game since week 7 of the season, a ceiling of 32.1 fantasy points. He's been fantastic. This is going to be a cold weather game, which could definitely impact these Miami Dolphins players. But I think that A-Chain is going to be very involved for that reason. So I like A-Chain a lot today. I am, however, worried about Hill, Waddle, and Tua time. Specifically Tua time. I think like Hill, Waddle could get enough volume in this game that they're flexible, but it's already a bad matchup against the Packers, giving up the 6th fewest fantasy points to the position. So you know what? No, we're going to keep them as sweet potato casserole, but I am worried about these guys today, and I just really like sweet potato casserole. So maybe this is a sign that they're going to be okay, but Tua has historically really struggled in these cold weather games. It's going to be cold. There might be snow. I'm worried about Hill, Waddle, and Tua in this matchup. Waddle and Hill are flex options. I went into this week with Tua as a start because he's had 23 or more fantasy points in 2 straight games, 3 or more passing touchdowns in 2 straight games, but I am officially worried about Tua. Weigh your options at quarterback if Tua Tagovailoa is one of your options. Johnny Smith, however, Johnny Smith is literally the topping on the sweet potato casserole with that brown sugar and all that good stuff. 23.7 or more fantasy points in 2 straight games. A touchdown last week, 2 touchdowns a week before, a touchdown in 2 straight games. He's been fantastic. He's moved up to the tight end 5 on the season. Start Johnny Smith. Let's not overthink that one. But this cold weather could really get to the Miami Dolphins offense today, and I am worried about them for that reason. But Devon A. Shane, I'm not going to fret on. Everybody else, outside of Johnny Smith as well, I got a little bit of worries about. We'll see what happens here on Thanksgiving Day. And that brings us to the Packers offense, and we're going to call them the stuffing today because I think this run game is going to absolutely hand it to the Miami Dolphins in a cold weather matchup. I mean, Josh Jacobs just absolutely pounding the rock as of late. He has been fantastic on the season. A running back we talked about in our league-winning trade video just 2 weeks ago. He's moved up to the RB6 on the season with 23.4 or more fantasy points in 2 straight games, 4 touchdowns in his last 2 games. He's been fantastic. You are starting Josh Jacobs with confidence today. What are you going to do with these wide receivers as Romeo Doubs is going to miss this week with a concussion? You got Jaden Reed, you got Dontavion Wicks, you got Christian Watson. There's always that little burnt piece of stuffing that just kind of is off-putting. That's what these wide receivers are, as this is an awful matchup. This Miami Dolphins pass defense has been fantastic on the entirety of the season. And they're giving up the 2nd fewest points to wide receivers. And then, is the Packers wide receivers, this is the biggest headache in all of fantasy football when it comes to the wide receiver position. So, I don't know if I can start any of these guys this week. Cold weather game, they're going to run the football first. One of these guys is going to score or get a couple catches or whatever, but it's a bad matchup. I can't start any of these Packers wide receivers with confidence this week. And you might see some volume to Bo Melton as well. Maybe it's him over Wicks. I don't know, man. But if I'm forced to start one, it's Jaden Reed. But I've been saying that for weeks now and showing some confidence in him. And he has 1 double-digit performance since week 7 of the season. And it was against Detroit, one of the most allowing teams to wide receivers. So I don't feel very good about these Packers wide receivers. Jordan Love, I am also worried about in this game, was pretty efficient this past week. There's some almost interceptions in that game that didn't happen. Christian Watson dropped what should have been a long touchdown, but he still threw 2 touchdowns. Didn't make too many mistakes there, but walked away just 14.7 fantasy points in a game where Josh Jacobs dominated the Niners. The week before, though, he had a tough matchup against the Bears and had 21 fantasy points. As you see on the screen, the Dolphins are also allowing the 2nd fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks. This pass defense has just been great on the season. So Jordan Love, not my favorite start. If you're forced to start him, sure, fine. But his ceiling's been a lot lower as of late for the most part. So I'm trying to avoid Jordan Love if possible. But he can always do very good things. Could end up being a solid start, but I'm not going to go out of my way to start Jordan Love this week. Tucker Kraft, on the other hand, he's always a streaming option. Touchdown dependent. Scored a touchdown this past week. Got you 10.6 fantasy points. In every game this year that he has a touchdown, he has double digits. Every other game, he has single digits. So if you want to roll with the Tucker Kraft experience this week and cross your fingers for a touchdown, go for it. Miami has been pretty bad against tight ends, giving up the 22nd most points to the position. So risky streaming option when it comes to Tucker Kraft. We'll see how this one plays out. It's the final game on Thanksgiving Day. And then we're going to move into Black Friday, where we have the Raiders traveling to face the Chiefs. And let's start with the Raiders side of things. And they are, you know what they are. It's Black Friday by the time this game plays. They're a cold sandwich with cold turkey, a little slap of mayo, and some white bread. And that's it. It is pretty good, right? But I can't give them anything more than that. Aiden O'Connell's been named the starting quarterback here. They got some surprises, right? You know, you get that cold turkey out the fridge, slap that mayo on it with that bread, and maybe a leftover roll. Maybe you throw some cold mac and cheese on there if you're risky. Bite into it, and you're like, this doesn't look good, but it's surprisingly kind of good. There's some sneaky stuff in here, but Aiden O'Connell's not any of that. We're not starting Aiden O'Connell this week. Glad that he's going to play and not Desmond Ridder. Should be better for some of the other players on the screen here. But yeah, we don't need to break it down. We're not starting in O'Connell. Now, the running backs are a little confusing because at the time of recording this, Alexander Madison has practiced in a limited capacity, so he might get the go. Amir Abdullah will probably be involved, and Zamir White is still not practicing. So I don't exactly know what to make out of the Raiders running backs, but the Chiefs have allowed the fewest fantasy points to running backs on the season. So it's not a good matchup for anyone involved here. No bye weeks. We're not in the bye-ocalypse like last week where Amir Abdullah may have been an option. I'm just avoiding all Raiders running backs this week, point blank, period. I do, however, with Aiden O'Connell at quarterback, like Jacoby Myers this week. He has found a way to come through for the most part in bad matchups. The last time he played the Chiefs, he had 17.2 fantasy points in week 8 and a touchdown in that game. He has double digits both times he's played the Broncos this year. He was not so good against the Dolphins, but ultimately, for the most part, in bad matchups, he's been pretty good on the season. And he just had his best game of the season with 22.1 fantasy points against the Broncos this past week. 15 targets, 10 catches, 121 receiving yards. Some of that in garbage time, but whatever. I think Myers is a solid start, a good flex option, and definitely a player that you can start this week with O'Connell at quarterback. So if you want to roll with Jacoby Myers, the floor is safe. Might not see the most upside, but you can definitely roll with Myers if you want to this week. Brock Bowers, smash matchup. The Chiefs have been very bad against the tight end position. He's coming off of a down week. It doesn't matter. He's a tight end 2 on the season. The Chiefs have allowed the 29th most fantasy points to the tight end position. Start Brock Bowers with confidence. End of story. Let's move on. Last but not least, we've got the Kansas City Chiefs, and they are those rolls, a little bit of butter on them that you're dipping in gravy. You're lying to me if you tell me you don't take your rolls and you dip them in gravy. That's the best part of a Thanksgiving dish. And the Kansas City Chiefs may end up having a monster day here against the Raiders, but we shall see, right? A lot of people thought that against the Panthers. They didn't quite do that. Let's start down the line here with Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco. At the time I'm recording this, it's kind of up in the air. Pacheco is listed as a full participant in practice so far on the week, so he is practicing. I believe he's going to play this week. What does that mean for Hunt and Pacheco? I think they're both flexible because it is a good matchup as the Raiders have allowed the 23rd most fantasy points to the running back position. So he's a flex option. Hunt's a flex option. Both of them. I was going to leave it at that. I don't know if I really want to start either of them this week because I want to kind of sit back and see how this plays out, how the volume looks, all that stuff. So if you're desperate, you can start Hunt or Pacheco, but I'm probably going to stay away from them this week. Although it is a good matchup, so if you want to risk it, go ahead and risk it for the biscuit. But I just think no bye weeks. I don't think you really need to make this move. But if you're desperate, sure. Hopkins, 14.5 points this past week against the Panthers. Xavier Worthy, 9.1 points. They're both risky flex options. The Raiders have ranked like top 10 against wide receivers almost all season long. So it's not particularly a great matchup here, as right now they're allowing the ninth fewest points to the wide receiver position. So Hopkins is a touchdown dependent flex. Worthy is a very risky touchdown dependent flex as well. So they're startable, but to what degree do you really need to start either of these Chiefs wide receivers? Patrick Mahomes has moved up to the quarterback 9 on the season. He has 16 or more fantasy points in every game since week 8, 19 or more fantasy points in 3 of those games. He's coming off of his best fantasy performance of the season with 28.7 fantasy points. He now has 3 or more passing touchdowns in 3 of the last 4 games. Actually, just literally 3 passing touchdowns in 3 of the last 4 games, not 3 or more. And so I think Mahomes is a solid start. I think if you own Mahomes, you start him this week. He's a strong start going into the week. Great matchup for him. He's been very good. He's been much better than the beginning of the season. This offense has kind of figured out a rhythm. Has some new players in here with Hopkins. You get Pacheco back. Noah Gray showing up, who will show up in a sec, or talk about in a second. So Mahomes, good start this week for sure. Travis Kelce stays in that start category. 12.2 points this past week. The Raiders have allowed the 31st most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Don't bench Travis Kelce. Great start this week. Don't really need to break that one down. But Noah Gray does have 2 touchdowns in his last 2 games. He's a strong streaming option. He didn't get picked up in as many leagues as I thought he would, probably because we got no teams on bye week. And it's kind of a short-term play, I think, because it's a good matchup this week. So you probably are feeling like you want to keep chasing those points. But after that, it's like, what are we really left with here? How long does this last? He has 18 or more fantasy points in 2 straight games. But if you need a flex option, you need a desperation play at tight end, you're in a deep dynasty league, whatever it is, Noah Gray's a good start this week. This Raiders unit is not good against opposing tight ends. So got a lot of good options here for the Chiefs offense here. Well, and tomorrow's Black Friday game. That'll do it for today's video. There's a little Thanksgiving Day special for you guys. And I truly want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you to each and every one of you guys. I am super grateful for you guys. This has been the most successful season for the channel ever, and I'm truly so thankful for all you guys who help support the Catch Fantasy Football and my dream of being a content creator. You guys are truly amazing, and some of you guys have been here for almost 5 years now. It's been a long journey, but I truly, from the bottom of my heart, am so grateful for each and every one of you guys. If you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out, because each and every week we have everything that you could possibly need to help you guys dominate fantasy football. You guys can drop a comment down below and ask me a fantasy question. I may or may not get back to you because it's a holiday, but of course, go ahead and drop your comments on any of the other videos throughout the week, and I will get back to you when I can. But if you guys do drop a comment, be sure to drop me a comment with like your favorite memory of the Catch Fantasy Football, or one of the things that you were thankful for from the Catch Fantasy Football community. We have so many dynasty leagues, so many great competitive leagues that we've played in over the years, so many fun times here on the channel. I would love to hear from you guys, and truly from the bottom of my heart, happy Thanksgiving to each and every one of you and your families and loved ones, and good luck in week 13.